G'day guys, let's have a quick talk about two Australian Wildcats, and this is one of them. I won't give you the full history, but I'll give you a brief rundown. Essentially what happened was World War II ended and Australian citizens, particularly New South Wales, I don't know what it is with New South Wales and firearms, but those fucking guys, you weren't allowed to have military calibers such as .303 British. So what do? Well, they just necked them down to make a Wildcat cartridge. The first being .303-25. Now, .303-25 is an Australian-made Wildcat which ended up having commercial success. However, it did also pop up in Canada, and I believe that some of the technology was given over to the Canucks so they could do a very similar thing with their surplus .303 rifles. The next one that popped up is this one here, which is .303-270. So you can push a heavier pill, and this one was more designed for the deer hunters, whereas the .303-25 was used more for the smaller medium game hunters, such as those who were hunting foxes, dogs, and wild pigs. Look, it looks exactly the same as the normal .303 British, however, it's neck down. The .303-270 and the .303-25 are actually so similar that I have heard of a bloke who was firing his .303-25, getting shit-ass accuracy at the range. He was keyholing at 100 metres. They couldn't figure out what the accuracy problem was. The problem was he was firing .303-25 out of a .303-270 because he hadn't slugged his bore and didn't know what actual calibre his gun was because it was a wildcatted gun, wasn't correctly marked. So there you go. So there's a good little tidbit of shit information for you. So what we'll do, let's jump into the computer and we'll run through the ballistic tables and I'll show you what these rounds are capable of. So .303-270 and .303-25 are not the only .303 Wildcats. They're just the two Australian ones that, you know, everyone in Australia's probably heard of. .303-25 being way more popular than .303-270 though. The other ones you can get out of .303, there's I think 3 or 4 different versions of a .303-22. And in New Zealand there is also a .303-35. So a .358 caliber projectile into a .303 British cartridge case, and that is was designed by hunters in New Zealand for taking red deer and elk, whatever the fuck the Kiwi name for that is, wapiti or whatever the fuck it's called. So those sets of Wildcats are obviously different. I'm not going to talk about them in this video. Alright, so in our table that you've got on the screen right now, we have a few of our calibers listed down the left-hand side. I've picked 2 grain weights for each cartridge. So the first 2 are just normal .303 British, the next 2 are .303-270, and the last 2 are .303-25. We'll go through each one at its different grain weight, the velocity it puts out, and then how much energy that's going to give you when we're talking about hunting with these cartridges. So the first one at the top there is .303 British in a 150 grain soft point. That's a typical hunting cartridge if you're going to hunt with .303. It's generally people hunt with. So it's going 2690 feet per second, which at the muzzle is giving you 3260 joules of energy. If you look down at the next one, the 174 grain. Now 174 is the grain weight of normal Mark 7 ammunition. You can probably see there, the one I've actually done the numbers off is a hollow point boat tail. But it's essentially got the same BC and it's the exact same weight as a normal military Mark 7. So that's sort of what we're using to gauge our numbers there. As you can see at the muzzle, it's actually got a fairly similar, pretty much the same amount of joules of energy. So 3260 versus 3265. This is where the difference occurs. Even though the 174 is going slower by 100, nearly 200 feet per second, the ballistic coefficient is better, therefore you're retaining more energy downrange. So at 100 metres, the 150 has got 2645 and the 174 has got 2795. And then you can see as we go further and further downrange, the 174, even though it's heavier and slower, has retained more energy downrange. Therefore, you know, better for hunting. Right, so here's the big difference when we go down to our .303-270s and .303-25s is you don't have as much energy as the normal .303. Now keep in mind, these numbers for .303 is way less than what you would get out of a .308. which is even less than what you'll get out of a 3006. So 303 British is it's a good cartridge. A lot of people use it, but it's not as powerful as people think. I know people who out there think that 303 is the absolute bee's knees and it will knock down everything, and it's like 300 Win Mag or some shit. It's really not, guys. It's really not the most powerful cartridge out there. For its time, when it was conceived, it was fairly good. But technology in ammunition has made things way better than ye olde 303 British. However, it's still a bloody good hunting round. So let's go down to our two 303 270 loads. We've got 130 grain and we have 150 grain. If we were just to compare the 250 grain, so the normal 303 British 150 and the 303 270 150, you will see that the 270 is going a bit slower at 2350, but it has a higher ballistic coefficient at 496. And then have a look at the energy. You can see that it's only putting out 2492 joules, which is a hell of a lot less. It's like 800 joules less than the 303 British in 150 grain bullet. And then obviously as we go down range, it's got less and less and less. So it's not the best round. And if you were to compare that to a 270 Winchester, it would have a shitload less. When you compare these though, so comparing let's forget that we've got the 303 British, let's compare the 270 to the 25. Now this is why they did make the 270 over the 25, because of the numbers you get. So out of a 100 grain bullet, at the muzzle we're getting 2000 joules. Is going the same speed as the 130 grainer of our 270, so 2500 feet per second. What it can show you, the difference is, about 400 joules of energy. Now that's not insignificant, that's a fair amount. It also helps you retain energy further down range. Let's go to 300 meters for instance. The 303 270 and 130 grainer is giving you 1396 joules, whereas the 100 grain 303 25 is actually only giving you 1000. So and that obviously continues exponentially downrange. So that's the reason why the 303 25 came first, and then they went, oh, you know what, we could probably get a bit more punch out of this if we put a 270 in it instead of a 25. In terms of size, that's actually not very much. But what it does do is it does give you that extra weight, which is what you're kind of after. 303 270 in Victoria you can use against sambar deer, being that it is a 270 caliber, which is the minimum caliber here, and the minimum weight being 130, which is what you can see there. So three of these numbers that I picked, or three of these bullet weights that I picked for each cartridge, I did purely because they're going the same speed. So 303 British in the 174 is 2500 feet per second. We have the 130 in the 303 270, 250 or 2500, and then our 100 grainer in the 303 25. So if you have a look at these numbers, and I'll circle them in red here, you can distinctly see the difference in energy output for those three cartridges. So there you go, guys. There is our two Australian homegrown Wildcats, the 303 270 and the 303 25. I hope you got something out of that video. Hopefully that's expanded your mind a little bit more. And New South Wales, come on, bloody, with your laws and stuff, you've been doing it since the fucking 40s. Anyway, so I'll catch you next video, and hooroo.